I am back. Hello.
So
Um,
here's a chat question. Can we all agree that Custo's sword was nerfed so hard that it made the item not worth getting, however, and that is an
uh,
issue
so
we should avoid?
so here's the thing about Custo. That sort of has a couple of problems. From one, it being a combination of two relatively rare items basically means that it's going to have to feel insane for it to ever feel like it was worth your time. Like that it's just a limit of you need these two rare drops in order to make this thing. Thing two is Custo was just it was basically impossible to make a better version of Custo Sword unless you literally took Custo Sword, made a copy of it, and just upped the numbers. That was the only real option. Because Overhaste is so strong, it was the only source of it. It was either going to have to be something like you have a sword that procs like 80% chance to proc Moon Comet or something, was going to be like something that sort of like ridiculousness is where you're getting with something like Custo Sword. This is one of those things where it should have just never been launched as it was, but there was no one was talking about stuff. Stuff was just getting made. There wasn't a lot of oversight from anyone, and that's just sort of what happens. In the past, when stuff that was like, in let's say 2008 to 2011 or so, when stuff like this was happening, there was generally someone being like, hey, this is a problem, and it would get fixed. And then after Ikasit launched, so many of the devs just sort of like went away. They left. And like I don't fault any of them. Some of them had been devs for 5, 6, 10 years. Like this is not something that most people are going to do forever. But just no one cared to fix it and just sort of got grandfathered in. And there wasn't really anything we could do about it unless and there's this issue of like players do not like to have the same item forever. No one is happy. Like getting that cool item that's really fun and new and rare is awesome. Wearing that same item for 5 years sucks, frankly. Like a lot of the fun of a game like this is trying to get new gear. If you can never replace your gear, it just does not feel good.
Oh.
So there's just like a delicate line we have to weave with trying to figure out like how good can we make things and have them be replaceable and have them feel good and special when you get them. Like it's a very delicate, hard thing to balance. And like when we did the weapon rework, it was just that there are so many things that had just been like if you looked at the items from like tier 1 to tier 10, for the most part they were like pretty, they mostly fit. Like obviously there was some variance up and down, but there was very few items where it was just like this item is, off of this item is off of Gongaworth and this item is off of, some mob and lower Thaz, where the weapons would literally be like a 50 or 75% delta.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to like actually make that to fix that once people start doing that. Especially when so this is something that we have to work on as a team and is like there's a sense of one-upsmanship that exists from developers, and this isn't like people being a jerk or anything. It's just like someone made this cool thing.
Yeah,
I want to make sure people want to kill my zone.
when the server gets
Let's make that
relaunched, these devs just delete your content straight up. Gone. I'm just kidding.
where we're just like people are like, oh, but this person made this cool thing. What if I made that plus one or that plus two? And then you just get this sort of like
Well,
Sitzel does not.
well, I think you
It
look
only
up to
nerfs your
the
guy while it's on.
developers, right? You look up to them and their creations, and then you model it after what they've done, if that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question here.
Um, go
So
for it.
it says, I know everyone is like asleep, but are there any thoughts out there to like night weapons, and then in parentheses, didn't play warrior, to smooth out weapon curve outside of Voss sword? Once I got final sword, I got nothing but cradle, which took literal years of actual active rating. I think before final Vol, I may have used mindful one hander.
Um, so is this class a
Oh,
paladin? Is this
that's
person a paladin or a
this is
shadow
from
knight?
Eric, Airek.
Okay, so yeah, I know who Eric is. So
It
I'm
was
trying to
actually
think.
from
So
General.
oh, okay. So like as far as that goes, I'm trying to think. So there's honestly there just wasn't really a lot of night one-handers made at that point. From talking to devs back then, the whole reason for that is that basically the Vonite swords existed, so they felt like didn't want to step on those toes. Like there was a lot of fear of like, oh, this item is from a very long quest reward. We don't want to make something better than that, or like it's I remember hearing Zayla say like, "Oh, I don't want to just invalidate that." On some level, like I agree. Like there probably shouldn't be something at you can complete the Voss Sword at like tier 10, Start of Sanctum. There probably shouldn't be something at tier 10 that's better than it.
Yeah, like at
Um,
that era, they didn't want warrior scythe. They didn't want that void to diminish, like between warriors and knights, right? Like the one-handed, you
yeah,
know, riposte stance, heal
Yeah.
the fool, right? You don't want the knight stepping on the warrior's toes in 2007.
yeah. So yeah, so there's definitely like a lot of this was, and this is I'm gonna say this now. This is something we're gonna try to be better about with the server launch. Is going wide rather than tall. At the end of the last server, there was sort of like because it was so hard to actually put out a new zone with like the limitations that were placed on us and the access like the actual ability to get a zone patched in, that if you were putting something in, it kind of needed to be the last thing plus one. And which just means you have like one tier 14 zone, one tier 15 zone. And then other than like a sprinkling of stuff here and there, that's what you got. So, if you're a knight and you want a new weapon, if you're a monk and you want a new fist, if there wasn't any put in that one zone, there's nothing. And like we have no idea when there's going to be a new zone coming out. So we'd rather try to go wide and make sure that like at tier 13 there's three raid zones or four raid zones. At tier 14 there's three raid zones and four raid zones for a couple reasons. This gives you multiple guilds the ability to farm. It lets you create more unique loot, so you don't have stuff where it's like every character looks the same, which was a problem for maybe not a problem, but it was definitely like you'd look at the top 10 clerics or whatever, and they'd all be wearing like 95% of the same gear. They'd have like two items different or whatever. And part of that because there was very little competition, right? People weren't fighting over gear, and part of that was also just there's one zone, like you're gonna wear what's there. Um, so Meryl's question is: Are disciplines going to be affected by weapon and offense skills rather than guaranteed hit? I don't think there's any plans to change that.
No, I think that was actually a solution
Is
to giving melee classes consistent DPS. I forget what the problem was. That
Yeah, I mean that's part of it, especially with rangers. If it's a little strong at low levels, like I'd be more apt to like tune it down at low levels. Like I know there's been a bunch of talk. So big picture, when we were doing the initial discipline reworks, what we were trying to like the problem we were trying to solve is that so much character power had been given just from items at the extremely high tiers. If your class didn't get those things or you didn't have those items, your character power was just all over the place. So what we try to do is like backport that power throughout the leveling process up through the tiers. And it was kind of hard to get it right to try to make sure that like we weren't putting too much power at level like 10 or whatever to get your first discipline and making sure you had enough at tier 13 or whatever. And we were kind of limited in how often we could change stuff before. Now it's going to be a lot easier for us. It's like, oh, this is too strong at, the level 55 version of this discipline is too strong. It's very easy to just tweak some numbers, have a quick reboot, problem solved.
Yep. One quick point to Meryl's question, and then I'm gonna go to the next question. But another problem that I don't think players, well, maybe they do, but in when you're grouping, the AC of mobs don't get debuffed as much as when you're in a raid scenario, right? And because disciplines use physical mitigation, which is pretty much unresistible, it gives you more consistent damage in EXP zones. So there's a question here from Sin. I have a question. Are you in danger of exceeding the physical limits of the game with all of these additional stats, or is there a lot of headroom for growth? So we do have in-game limits that we had, like flowing thought, critical strike chance, mind shields, right? And already at the current, I think Spires, you begin to start hitting those limits, right? And as a developer, right, how do you make, because you just talked about it's exciting getting new upgrades. Well, how do you continue to make new exciting upgrades when the when there are class limits, basically, or statistic limits? How would you go about solving that, Jeff?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a hard question. I mean, if you look at any gear from modern EQ and you look at what their gear looks like, it's actually kind of frightening to
Hmm.
have like you'll every stat is like every item has like just like a clicky, a proc, a focus effect. Every stat, huge numbers on everything. Like those are definitely things you have to um, be cognizant of. And like we can definitely do things with increasing some of those caps, right? Like we have AAs for it. Excuse me, we have AAs for things like increasing the flowing thought cap. We could definitely do AAs for more stuff like that. Obviously, right now with the server relaunching, we don't really need to add more AAs. There are plenty, so that's not a concern right now, and people not having gear. But in the future, it'd definitely be nice to increase the caps in some of those things.
Yeah, and something to add on to that, we could, in theory, mess with heroic stats,
Yeah, I think
but that
season
would be a lot of implementation.
Well, the
Yeah.
only problem, so I was like, someone asked me about this the other day, and the only problem with heroic stats is just things like dex and agility. We can't do a ton with. We can do some, um, but we just have to be careful because there are, flat hit percentage caps and flat like avoidance stuff. Um,
I think we
Oh
can add
god.
instancing.
I just saw this item that Tor linked in the chat. That's a little bit of HP and mana.
so the question about instancing we've answered before, but I'll answer it really quickly. Could instancing happen at some point in the future? Yes. Are we just going to instance everything that already exists? No. This would be the sort of thing where we would use it. We would probably be designing content specifically to be instanced and not just turning everything that already exists into instances. We'd rather make sure that there's plenty of content for you to do at any given time rather than there being one raid zone at tier 11 and everyone does that in their own instance. We'd rather make sure there's, enough content so you can all just like, so there's people have stuff to raid. We're hoping that there's enough separation between the guilds that not everyone is. And I mean, there's so much verticality already. The hope is that you're going to have a guild or two at the top, a couple guilds a few tiers below, a couple guilds a few tiers below, and that people will just sort of naturally spread out.
I mean, we had
Um,
ideas for season 3, right? So I think
yeah.
I kind of like that framework, right? It's already in the game, in the core code. Um, there's a lot of interesting things we could do in that year. Because I think the game is, if you look at any snapshot in window of time, like, is tier 10 rating, you know, 10 years ago better than tier 12 rating, you know, 5 years ago? Or, like, is playing the game at a snapshot in time, like launch is going to be exciting and it's levels 1 to 10. Is that better than tier 12 rating? Like, you're still playing the game, it's just all perspective of where you are. Like, you're just comparing yourself. Maybe this is more like a deeper psychological point. Like, are you comparing yourself to a previous state and you have to keep increasing? And so now is a full server reset, so now everybody is gaining power. There was a question of, like, do we slow down the EXP gain in the beginning of the launch just to kind of like allow everyone to enjoy, the beginning? I don't know if that ever got answered.
Hmm.
Um, so as far as someone asked, is there a plan to adjust the leveling speed to 65 for launch? Honestly, no. Like one to 1 to 30 is actually super quick. My biggest concern with launch is actually not leveling speed, it's going to be congestion. Like I was literally today thinking about how can we do things to handle congestion at launch because we don't know how many players are going to be. My guess is, there's like almost 500 players in the Discord. Not all of them are going to be there at launch, but there's probably going to be 600 to 800 characters logged in across the, whatever it is, 6 or 7 starting zones. So that's something that's on the attempt to fix the problem thing from today.
Hmm.
Well, it's
Um,
very interesting. We now have a few more starting zones that can help
that's
with
true.
that issue.
We definitely do. It's not. So yeah, we will see who's there. I would expect. Um, like I said, I'm expecting between like 300 and 600 characters, but there, like I said, there's almost 500 people in Discord, and obviously not everyone's going to be there right at launch. But
Oh, they're gonna be boxing too. I forgot about that.
yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, you could just load a zone in, just repop the zone.
Yeah, I was thinking. I was looking at see if we had any hooks that dynamically respawn mobs today.
I made one
I don't know.
I
I
for
have
was
an
trying to find
easy
the spawn function.
question.
Blazing Forge, global variable, and you just kind of adjust it as the. It's when a mob
Yeah, that's what I
dies.
was looking for.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure if I just couldn't like instantly find anything. So I was like, I wonder if there's something for this.
Depop takes an argument that will reset the. It'll depop it and
Right.
respawn in a duration, so you just have to adjust that basically.
Um, oh,
I
so
see a
something I'd
very
asked this
easy
earlier.
question.
Go for it.
Oh, will the devs be playing?
Yes.
It's from Zaltec. I'm psyched. I'm ready.
I'll try to
Yeah.
find time
I want to
for it.
break
I
my
will
sleep
definitely.
schedule for it.
Um, yeah. So we'll definitely. I'm definitely going to make sure there is some way that we can dynamically adjust spawns, just that we can account for, um, you know, the amount of players that are in a zone. Like, if you look at the very beginning of the newbie yards, the most of the enemies now have like a 60-second spawn time. When you consider it takes even like, unless you have a full group, it's going to take you 30 seconds to kill something like with a duo. That's not the end of the world. But then when you look further out in the zone, you start hitting 3-minute spawn times, 10-minute spawn times.
I mean, I'm
Um,
sure there'll be more grouping, right? So you'd have
yeah,
to exceed the. I don't know. Maybe remove raid XP uh, penalty in newbie yards.
yeah. I mean, maybe.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, it would definitely be one of those things where like I know there's a solution. I just didn't have enough time to really dig into it. So um, yeah, at least like I know I'm going to be playing in a group that's all staff members, just because in case you need to go put out a fire. If I'm playing with two other staff members, it's like, oh, we can stop what we're doing and go put out a fire, rather than it being like, sorry guys, I've got to leave, and half of your group mates are just like, but you're our tank or whatever.
Hmm.
We could flag everybody
Um,
PvP in newbie yards. That would fix the issue.
yeah, just let them kill each other. That would be chaos.
But only if I can kill them on my GM tune too.
Brims, I didn't see your second question. Let me.
Meanwhile, I need to write down a reminder about my spawn times in the new zone because now I'm realizing it might be a little too long.
Um,
What time are we launching the server?
it's going to depend on availability. We still
Three,
got to we still got to hammer that out.
3 a.m.
Zaltec, I'm not talking about Ikasith stuff because I don't want to get killed by Marza. So if you ask me questions about Ikasith, the rule is we don't talk about Ikasith.
There are lizards there. The lizard people that stand on two legs.
Cactuses.
Um, yes, my favorite bit of Ikasith lore is there are no orcs in Ikasith according to the main quest.
Oh, that's funny. Is it
And
really?
yeah, one of the first book you get for the main quest literally says that orcs are extinct on Ikasith.
Are they really?
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, then
that's
I'm
like
Huh.
not.
it's at the bottom of like the first section in the first lore book. For everyone but you, Stever.
Yeah, we'll constantly smooth out dungeons, and we just had a discussion about this week. It just can't be done
Yeah,
anytime soon.
yeah. There's definitely going to be some dungeon balancing done. There's been some done already, a little bit. Um, this is going to be one of those things where there's going to be a bunch of balancing stuff done. We want to do some stuff to try to incentivize people selling loot rather than just vendoring so much of it.
I think we got
But
a copy of Famelo, right? Or is that a spoiler?
well, we do, but the things you're doing might change that.
Okay.
So
Oh. And that in itself is a spoiler.
yeah, remember the thing you were telling me you were going to be doing? That's going to change that.
Yeah, but doesn't.
Make me write a whole new Pomelo from scratch.
Gotcha. I think it's Lissold. No
Um,
changes to Lissold.
items. What am I most excited about? That is an interesting question.
It's a very good question.
Arguing with players in a year and a half from now.
Uh,
Just kidding.
honestly, I'm excited just like people just get to experience things. Oh, I'm excited for my zone preview, which comes out tomorrow.
Yes.
Ooh, that's a good one. I am excited for a lot more froglocks to be hopping around. That's going to be fun.
Jeff, can you add
Um,
an extension to the Famelo where you can print a resume with your Famelo character on it?
yeah.
Please make
Um,
sure that it's PDF only.
Danar, so it is not a water zone. Here's my spoiler. The zone I made is the zone that was converted from a raid zone to a 6-man. That is what you'll find out. You'll find out the rest tomorrow.
Find out in one good weekend.
Yes, Duke. The zone I made was originally going to be part of season 3. It was actually my dev application. I started working on that, and then everything sort of went. So, um, so Meryl's, we kind of had to. It causes a bunch of combat issues where it literally just changes things hitboxes. So we didn't really want to because it's kind of cool, but it literally anything that's sufficiently big, it changes if you can hit the mob in certain scenarios or not. So we literally just couldn't not. So okay, people keep asking about the mob. We're not ready to reveal what's going to change. I will say this. Um, 2 new mop portals got added this week.
Yeah, that's true. I'm
Um,
sure people can figure out what those two would be, though.
I will say this:
Bottom
you
of
can
sea
figure out what they
swords.
are. You can figure out what they are, but you won't figure out where they are. If that makes sense.
Yeah, bottomless sea of swords and the very, very top skyline of North Badlands. It also takes away your levitate. I can say it is not in my zone.
Yeah, Duke's Zone does not have a mop. It does have some really cool portals. What do you call them? Portals, Duke?
Yeah, portals.
That's fair.
Not mansion portals.
Myers, here's the thing. I almost made a druid. I've been playing a druid on the server for like 10 years. But when I started here, I started on a shaman. I always loved my shaman. The reason I quit my shaman was because they were just not in a good place for so long.
Emotionally.
And the other problem with, yeah, well, both emotionally and balance wise. And then part of that was just because there was a certain fear of stepping on clerics' toes by buffing druid in any way that wasn't just making them better at tank healing. And that druid just kept constantly getting buffed to be better at tank healing, which made shamans have this really awkward position of our role has been taken by druids and we can't group heal, so why would you bring one? Eh, I have one mode and it's talking about class changes.
It's true. It's been the past 2 months, really.
Um, I mean, just honestly, like I want druids to be good. I want shamans to be good. I want everyone like in my heart of hearts. My preferred setting would be at the start of every raid, you grab a shaman, a druid, and a cleric, and then you should have to make a somewhat of a decision about what the last two are. I don't think that's necessarily where we ended up. Like I'm not going to be like, oh, we got there because I don't think that's true. I did try to make things closer. I don't. To be clear, clerics are still going to be the best healers. That's still baked in. But I also don't want. I don't want the gap between clerics and other healers to be so huge that you get to a point where it's just like there's no way we can kill this without 3 clerics. And as someone who played a druid for 10 years, when you're doing upper Thaz progress, I had to have multiple bosses nerfed because they were impossible to heal solo as a druid, like heal a group as a druid, and they were just fine on a cleric. It wasn't even close. A cleric could just group heal through it and pretend nothing else existed. It wasn't a skill issue, Steve. Seaver. There was no way you could get off There's two fights that was a problem. The initial magma, which got nerfed, and then the second one was air boss, where you just couldn't actually get two group heals off in between the AOE's, and your group heal was too small to handle it. Um, Racial XP penalties. So currently, most racial XP penalties are really small. The big issue here is mostly that a lot of this is perception. Not that they don't matter, because they do matter, but if you actually look at how the racial penalties or bonuses work, a lot of the time they end up being pretty small. The issue is going to be like at basic like break points where you're like, oh, I now have, I got 5% more XP, so now I have 50 more AAs, right? That 50th AA makes a big difference between the 48th AA a lot of the time, because there's so many things that are like, this AA costs 50. So if I now have this extra 50 and they didn't, I have 3% more power than this other person. But the trade-off there is also that um, once you get to a certain point, the value of AAs drops off drastically. Once you hit like 4,000 or so, like what's left is so minimal. It's like I get it. I understand why people care about it. Like it is something that matters. But we like did not want to spend a bunch of time trying to fix racials when they're honestly we already fix a bunch of stuff that was just broken, stuff that didn't work. Like barbarian racials that just didn't work, and human racials that just didn't work. Had to fix those. Humans were getting half elves damage reduction to spells. There's a bunch of little things where it's literally just like this did nothing,
Everything is
or
a
this
lie.
worked like yeah. So I'm going to share this because this is one of my favorite things that I've stumbled upon since being a dev. I was recently looking through the code for how bash works and how kick works, and just any of those activated abilities, bash, kick, flying kick. Randomly in that code, there's a section that just says troll more smash, troll damage times 1.25. I don't know why.
That's right.
But it's bash
I don't
damage,
know.
not just damage, though, right?
Well, yeah, it's any activated ability would tag this. So bash, kick. It's just arbitrary. I honestly have no idea why it's there.
It's so that
It's
everyone
just
rolls
there.
a rogue troll or troll rogue, right? He's
It's
backstab
just so
activated
bizarre.
ability.
Like it
I
basically
think
will.
it's just Fuwok propaganda at this
It's
point.
not Fuwak because Fuwak doesn't have core. The Fuwak didn't have core access when that was put in. I don't know who put it there.
Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it.
Like I said, it's just random. I don't know why it's there. Um,
Do you have any more questions?
I'm sure there are. Just be clear, we're not adding any more race stuff right now. Might be more in the future. We don't want to just. We're not looking to just add them to add them. If we add them, we want to have a good reason. Like if someone wants to make a cool zone themed around adding something, like if Rickles wants to do his thing and be like, I want to make something random out there, we'll consider it. But at the same time, like it's a very delicate balance because when any class can be anything, it makes your race not feel special. Like it no longer makes race selection feel like it matters a ton. But at the same time, everything being super limiting also isn't great. So we have to be delicate about like what we add and what we don't. Um, oh, spell effect stuff. That's something that we'll probably talk about in the future. So I can say on a GM at least, you can see it, but it doesn't update right. Most of it, like personally, I don't have a problem with you seeing, your dots or whatever on a mob. Um, the only thing would be like Mez and Charm not giving you accurate information. Like I wouldn't really want you being able to see, my Charm has 4 ticks left on it, my Mez has 2 ticks left on it. But outside of that, I personally have no problems. I don't know about how anyone else in the team feels, but
You mean like the debuff icons?
yeah, the debuff window.
Okay, so I wanted to make that an enchanter ability so that they could debuff the target, and then it allowed the entire raid to see the debuffs on the target for a duration.
Mm. I mean,
I don't
I
know,
don't
or
know.
you just
We'll,
let
we'll have
everybody
to have a
see them.
convo about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like for most of it, I don't think it matters. The only thing because honestly, if you're doing something like dots or a debuff, you can just set up a Gina trigger anyway and just track it for you. There's no reason to not just let the UI do it and save the players the hassle of having to set up a Gina thing for it.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it is. It will be precisely accurate.
my wife says she has flagged some more questions for me.
Yes.
While you guys do more questions, I actually have to head out. I just got a phone call and I need to respond to it real quick.
All right, Duke.
See you later, man.
If I'm back, I'll be back. But if not, bye everybody.
All right, so this question is from Brims, which is, can you go into how charisma and mob resist interact with a player casting a spell on a mob? Maybe how the calculations work and how much charisma actually impacts landing spells. I can't right now because I don't have the code in front of me. I'm gonna see if I can fix this. So right now it's showing
You
my
should put the
blank
chat
Discord
there,
thing.
right? When you moved the chat in earlier.
It's not that easy. I
Oh.
don't like this is Rari setup, so it's like this is one of those things where like I don't know the math off the top of my head. I looked at it a while ago. It does. I know it does have it until up to the cap. It does play a big role in landing spells. Once you hit 335 with all the AAs, anything past that's a much smaller amount. But like basically any stat until you hit the stat cap is super strong. I would say the only one that's not honestly probably not that strong is like stamina because it's just extra hit points. Like it's certainly good. Extra HP is good, but it's not as good as like reducing your resist chance or doing a bunch of extra damage from strength. Um, so, like I said, I would have to look. I would be comfortable giving you like super deep details, but giving you like a better understanding of it would be absolutely fine. All right, so here's a series of questions from Thorheim, which are all pretty simple. Will the runic pet for the necromancer remain the brown new model skeleton? I don't think its model's changed. Are Ixar Beastlord's Codairs using Grinkle's T's new skins or the existing model? They will be the old model Codair. What is the staff stance on players customizing client-side graphics? I remember on SOD, Grinkle's had a method for players reverting some models to old. I'm interested in this in reverse. I don't have a problem with that. The only thing I'll note is that chances are every time you patch, it's going to overwrite your files. So that's something you need to be aware of.
I wonder if we could create a toggle for that. We have a lot more control over things, so.
Click on Duke and call. Click on call. There we go. So yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, I have no problem with you using the new pet models or old pet models, whatever you want. I don't know what's going to entail changing. This is a Grinkles thing, so you'd have to ask him. Um, where did the chat go? I think those are the only two she had flagged.
Is the list sold banking system going to be the same for the economy? It's going to be exactly the same because we haven't addressed it. There's nothing wrong with it. It might theoretically change.
Brooms, I don't understand your question. Does that interact differently with how the resists work now that you've made them reduction rather than you used to work?
We have a lot of cool web tools. I mean, we could probably do something where you're able to buy something for your character while you're at home, basically from the web interface. I don't know. That could be pretty neat. Like,
Yeah,
look at that item.
we have a lot of options now. It's just a question of like what part. So Steve, right now they aren't. I think that's probably something we could do. Again, that's like a cold side thing. Generally, that sort of like core stuff back end, I mostly leave to him. So that would be, that's cold time and that's expensive time.
Oh, queuing up tells.
Yeah.
Uh, hmm. I like the big projects. That's really kind of what I do. I just forget it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it just like just keep bringing it up until it gets fixed. Like that's like every change is for what I do is do I have an idea of how to make the change, and on a scale of 1 to 3, how likely am I able to, how great is that understanding? And then like queuing tells when it comes to like zone and server communication. Like right now is a problem that bugs me when I'm testing a zone and I reboot it. If it kicks my character in a certain way, I have to control alt delete end the client, right? It's generally speaking, I can like the old client I was testing because what I do is I make a change, reboot the server, log in again, right? Make a change, log /q out. So and the old client 3 queue outs, the client crashes. ROF2, I can do that 150 times and it just keeps going. But if we reboot the server, a lot of people are AFK, the client disconnects, and like there's a way that EQMU, when you reboot a zone, it just kicks all the clients and sends it the appropriate what the client needs to cleanly close, right? It'd just be a quality of life for the development process. So like things like that are like queuing tells. It's like um, you'd have to store them in world and then send them to the zone. It's is it possible? Absolutely. Yeah. They'd probably send people like, hey, just so you know, it's broken. It's sending me passwords or something like that.
And I'm
Like
just
no,
thinking about Fuwak's carrier pigeon thing he was talking about last week.
like I'm not joking. We got a petition one time. Someone in the newbie zone started, and they said, I just got to tell, and it was the SSH key, just some SSH key they got as a DM. Like we don't know how that happens, or I don't even know if it was legit, but it was them receiving a message in zone that was it was just really weird. Like I have no idea how that even happened.
So for now, Benson, Lissold is staying. It might get addressed in the future, but we kind of had to pick and choose our battles, and we had more important things to do. Um, there are significant bar changes coming. I'm actually putting the finishing touches on them now. They'll be going out in a couple weeks. Um,
So what if like simple change like list sold doesn't necessarily need you to be targeting a banker, right? And we could do quality of life so you could view more queries, you know what I mean? Like maybe you could purchase
sure.
like if you're not at a bank, then it only uses the money that you have on your character, so to speak, right? So when you're in a group rating, you can view list sold or
I think we have the Lissold webpage. I'll double check, but I think we do.
it'd be kind of
Honestly,
neat if
that would also be pretty easy, right?
yeah. It wouldn't be immersive, but if you could just like let's say you've got a BOE in a dungeon and you could list sold it right there, that's so immersive, bro.
I
That's
mean, that would be, I would not be a fan of that, but
I'm a fan. Just some Fuwak zone,
um,
you get like a troll credit card or something.
yeah, that would be a very Fuwak thing. I think we've gone pretty long here, so I think I'll take another question or two, um, and then be done. Is there anything good that I got scrolled past me a billion times? Oh, does overcap offense actually make a difference?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes. So all overcap weapon skills do something. When you're making an attack with a weapon, they basically take the average of your offense and your weapon skill, and that's how calculations are done. So if you've got 240 offense and 250 one-hand blunt, and you're using a one-hand blunt weapon, it adds them together and takes the average. And then once you hit 250, so once the average is 250, everything past that is way worse. So generally speaking, getting to 250 for any class that doesn't have 250 is super valuable. Getting so that's an average of 250. So if you've got 240 offense, 261 hand blunt, that's an average of 250. That's the magic number. Getting past that, way less valuable. Does very little. Does something, gives you a little bit of accuracy, a little bit of damage, but not much.
Does the
Um,
bonus increase as the enemy becomes more avoidant, say higher agility, or I know I have
now
to look at
it's
the
just a
no.
multiplier,
Okay.
just a flat multiplier. So basically, what'll happen is like it'll calculate some base numbers, multiply that by your weapon skill, and then later in the calculation, it'll compare your dex versus their agility. Step or two later. So yeah, it does not do a ton. Um, does bring up something that I'm going to note, which is debuffing a mob's agility is very good. You should do that.
Did we talk
Um,
about allowing like players to exceed the boxing limit in zones for like let's say they're trading? That is
I
because we were
mean, we
talking about
didn't. I
yeah. So like let's say East Commons tunnels. If you have a character selling things there, then you're able to box that in.
Sure. I mean,
I know, just random
With
thoughts.
the current list holding system, I don't think that makes a ton of sense, and it's going to throw like false flags for GMs, right? So I'd rather not
Oh, it's true.
deal
Yeah.
with that. Um, so one thing I am going to talk about now that isn't a question that I asked, but something Matt asked me the other day. Someone asked me what was going on with Spell Surge, and I've done all the int casters now, so I'm going to get to this. We love Spell Surge. Spell Surge is still there. Spell Surge has been moved to the special tab, so you have to have 250 AAs to buy it. And it now has a cost of 50 AAs. The reason for this is it was intended to be something for like super high tier characters to replace some clickies that got removed. We still want it to be there, but during seasons, getting that basically as soon as you got 12 AAs, in some cases was like increasing caster damage by 75%. Don't really want that bit. So it's still there. You're just not going to be able to get it as soon as you hit 12 AAs because it was just a little much at the very low end.
Spell Surge is a perfect
Um,
example of designing in a box, right? Because hey, we removed clickies from the game at the highest tiers, right? There's no consideration to lower tier clickies, right? It was just the highest tier, and then we're gonna give a solution at the highest tier, right? And then when you did season, it's like, this is actually kind of busted, right? Because you just made a change in a very narrow slice of the game, basically, and it caused a lot of problems.
that's also why we rolled back a lot of the stuff that was done to try to buff people at high tiers, buffing low level spells and adding runics to replace them essentially. Um, because it was just one of those things where it was literally like we during the season be like, oh, this class is really strong because we buffed all of their low level spells at to fix a problem at tier 14 or whatever, and now it's like, oh, this class is now just insane. So now we're having to go back and like sort things out, and there are gonna be things we missed. I'm gonna be straight up. Like I know that the discipline classes are overtuned at low levels and low tiers, and are probably gonna have to address them after launch. But it's just one of those things where like we're trying to bring up the classes that were particularly bad. Like the wizard was honestly the wizard spells. If you play the wizard, most people play wizard the way most people try to play a wizard. They were very, very, very bad. They were literally like half the damage of any other class. If you knew that you should cast Reigns and only cast your Reigns, they were quite strong. Or like they were, I should say, they were comparable to like the other casters. They're comparable to Necro. They're comparable to Wizard. But if you're just a person who's coming here expecting, oh, I should cast my single target nukes on single target things, you were just screwing yourself.
Oh,
Actually, I think there's an X. It's up to like the first 1,000 AAs now,
so my answer,
I
what I'm
believe.
most excited about is kind of like long haul picture, kind of say like a year of changes, right? Then maybe 6 more months go by. Then maybe we have like a season launch, and then I think, because in the previous environment we were breaking login records on EMU, right? In that kind of stifled environment, right? So now we are no longer in a stifled environment. So I would like to see just continual growth, and I think as long as everybody is active and we all work together and there's good ideas, and there's a lot of feedback between players and developers, like just communicating with players was something I've wanted to do for a long time. I never liked the whole like don't talk about this. I'm still kind of having like like because we're in a spoiler season. I don't talk about this. I'm like, I haven't been able to talk about things for years. Why? When can I talk about stuff? Right? I just want to talk.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about things, just as long as it's not class spoilers. Oh,
Uh,
the enchanter thing you wanted to ask me. You asked me about spoiling last weekend with
Wait,
the focus effect.
did we bring that up? But the thing is, the stuff I work on, I don't get
No,
any
we didn't.
spoilers.
I mean, that's fine. Like, if you want to do spoilers,
No,
well,
I
to be
can't.
honest, if the one thing,
The one thing
I
I'm
mean, to be
working
fair,
on,
if
we
the thing you're
can't.
about to start working on happens,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was the
Uh,
Book of Chanter thing? Did we?
Fortification,
Oh yeah, the fortification enhancement. Yeah, we just combined
yeah,
we buffed duration enhancement. But you just
yeah,
post you can put it in the special channel there.
yeah. So the duration increment now is called fortification enhancement, and it also increases the effect of runes. Is it of the caster or of the wearer? I think it's the caster, right?
It's the caster, so it's like healing increment. So there are
Yeah.
two problems. Duration increment was not as useful with the new aura system, so we wanted to kind of buff that a little bit. And also runes. If you compare the enchanter's big runes to say a cleric's big heals, the flat values kind of scale equally, and then it kind of begins to widen when you add focus effects. So my idea was like, well, why don't we have a focus effect that increases runes? Like that's the thing about I feel enchanters should like they a major theme for enchanters is runes. So there's a whole bunch of runes that we could add for spell effects. There are runes that take 10% of the damage you take, and they slowly dwindle it off your hit points. So like, let's give you 1,000 point rune, and you get hit for 1,000 damage. It takes 100 of the damage and takes it off the rune. So runes in that system are mitigating a percentage of the damage rather than all the damage all at once. You can convert runes to that system. And this is just kind of more of like a bigger picture of class design. Like I think runes are a thematic, a major. Like if there's one class that's best at runes, it's probably the enchanter, right? But there's really no development on that front. So enchanters healing runes. I don't know. I don't think so.
It says shamans, but
Oh,
no.
shamans.
Yeah. So
I see what I want to see.
I mean, I thought about a mitigation healer for a bit. Honestly, it's somewhat problematic from a balance perspective. Like I would be okay with giving a healer some form of mitigation, like a healer, like some ability to do that. I wouldn't want to go all in on it. I wouldn't want it to just be like shaman or druid is like the mitigation class now. Like I play a lot of EQ too, where they do that on shamans, and it's cool, but it kind of breaks a lot of stuff unless you tune stuff to be psychotic, and I'd rather not do that. All right, so we'll answer one more question. It's 8:25, so we'll take one more. Oh no. Um,
So yes, fortification enhancement does the same thing duration and enhancement does per rank, and it also increases rune strength of the caster by was it 2% per rank or 3%? I can't remember if I changed it to 3%.
I don't know. It was two, and then I was like, should it be three? And then I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I think it's 2 right now. It can move up if
It
it
should
needs
probably
to.
be three to match younging, but
Yes. All right, one more question.
if anyone's got a good one, we'll take it.
Mm,
Uh, so Toast, they're just group heal pro. So basically, quick thing about mages, the mage procs aren't procs; they're just abilities that happen on a timer. So in theory, you could use a bunch, and they're just group heals. They're just small group heals. So you could, in theory, have six mages just triggering little group heals every. I don't remember the timer is 12 seconds. So you could do something like that. It wouldn't be super powerful, but it's especially since they wouldn't hold very good threat, and you'd just be tanking on the mages. But you could do that. Um, Generally, with the mage changes, the thing about the pets is mostly just that. Like, if you looked at what they did under the hood, um, it would be we could not do temporary instances. We don't have the tech for that.
you would just
We've got.
see
I mean,
high
we'd
elf
have to.
legs.
Um, it's one of those things where we could have the tech for it, just we haven't ported it over yet, and that will require work. Um, but the with the mage pets, it was just that they, like under the hood, they were all really similar. Like literally, the four mage pets. The only difference with them were their abilities and their health, and some of those abilities were like super similar. It really like realistically, while leveling, using anything other than air before made zero sense. They did about the same damage as fire. They had a little less HP than Earth, and they generated more threat than Earth. There was no reason to use anything else.
The
Um,
the I
so
think the
yeah,
important major theme right now is that like my uh battle cry, so to speak, is like if it can wait till after lunch, let's wait till after lunch, right? Because we were like, there's a lot of ideas and a lot of things you want to do. Like I'm working on core stuff and I want to work on class design, but
mhm.
so it's just really struggling to stay focused on just getting the server launched and operational, and then at the I mean, we've done so much work in. I mean, this is
Five
like 10
months, four
years of
months.
old patch in like four 4 months.
Yeah, we're about to hit 5 months. We're almost at five. So it's been a whirlwind, man.
So you're gonna see a lot of
Um,
class. I think, generally speaking, like the mage was launched. Not we basically okay. That's this is good. We need to send it how it is right now,
yeah,
right?
there's like the only thing I didn't get to change about Mage that I want to change is there AA that provides stances. Not because I don't think the stances are cool, because they are. We just need to get people off of stances, so they need to be converted into AA buttons or something. Got to figure out how to do that. Um, like I
Hmm.
said, but that's like that sort of thing where it's like, okay, this is a problem we know we need to solve, but if we ship it without it, it's not an issue. It's not going to break anything. So we're just trying to make sure, like, big picture, we need to get the core base ideas for the class in place. um, like I had a long conversation with someone who was very upset about the Forbidden Harvest change, and I don't blame them for being upset. I knew they were going to be, but the goal here is to make sure that we have a core system that works. And then if people get to the place where Forbidden Harvest used to kick in, and their mana is atrocious, I would rather fix the system as a whole and not just be like, here's a band aid that makes you pretend mana that doesn't exist at tier 10 when if wizard mana is terrible from tier 1 to tier 9, I don't want it to just be like, oh, I have to play this terrible character that sucks to play and everyone tells me, oh, it'll get better in 12 tiers. That's not particularly fun to be like, no one wants to play the game with the 5 hour tutorial or like watch the show where they're like, yeah, just grin and bear it through the first season. Like, that's not, don't want that. um Charm cost, nothing to talk about right now. Total XP required, again, nothing to talk about. Just because what we learned during the seasons as far as XP required goes is you can kill so much stuff with just like 1,000 AAs, and that's on it. Like you can kill the first 13 tiers of the game realistically, maybe the first 12. And there's enough changes happening between character balance stuff and raid balance stuff that's going on that trying to sort that out now would be really hard to do. Yeah, I am. We're done now. It's 8:30. It's been 90 minutes. I'm gonna free Cole up to go. Hang out with his wife and kids, and I'm gonna go hang out with my wife. Um, so thanks everyone for coming. It was great. We're happy to answer your questions. There's probably only going to be one more QA before launch because we're coming in crunch time now. Um,
I saw two on the list
as
on
I
the schedule.
Yeah, I think she scrapped one, but I'd have to look.
Hmm.
Close guest until 8:30. Okay. Again, thanks everyone for coming. Close guest. Okay, I'm gonna do that, and I will thank you all again. Thank you all. We'll let you know when the next one's gonna be. It's gonna be in a couple weeks. Healer spoilers will start next week.
Oh, the healer
I think they're
spoilers.
gonna start on Wednesday. We've got some preparatory stuff, but thanks, Cole, for being here. We will catch you guys later.
You just wait till the last person's here and then start a spoiler as they leave. All right, the next spoiler is 20.